Let me write part 1 of how humanity became the new species in 730 words, using simple English and a third-person perspective, making it engaging without headings. The message appeared on a quiet Tuesday night. The massive radio telescope in New Mexico picked up something different from the usual cosmic background noise. At first, Tom Miller, the night shift operator, thought it was just another technical glitch. He'd seen plenty of those during his 15 years at the facility. But this was different. The pattern kept repeating every 12 seconds. Clear, precise, and definitely artificial. Tom's hands shook as he reached for his phone to call Dr. James Walker, the head of their research team. Within an hour, the control room was packed with scientists, all staring at the screens with a mixture of disbelief and excitement. "This isn't random," Dr. Walker said, his voice barely above a whisper. The older scientist had spent his entire career searching for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence. Now, at the age of 56, he was looking at the discovery of a lifetime. The message wasn't just a signal, it was a warning. It took the team 3 days to decode the first part of the message. The aliens had sent it in a surprisingly simple mathematical format, using basic elements like hydrogen and helium as reference points. The message was clear: Earth needed to prepare. 2 ancient species were bringing their war to our solar system. The government tried to keep it quiet at first, but when multiple observatories around the world picked up the same signal, the news spread like wildfire. People reacted differently than expected. Instead of panic, there was a strange calm. Humans had spent so many years wondering if they were alone in the universe that the confirmation of alien life felt almost natural. Dr. Walker and his team worked around the clock to decode more of the message. Each new piece revealed more disturbing information. The 2 alien species had been fighting for longer than Earth had supported life. One side called themselves the Builders, a species that claimed to protect and nurture developing worlds. The other side was simply known as the Swarm, a collective that consumed resources and adapted to survive at any cost. Earth was about to become their newest battleground, and humanity had less than 6 months to prepare. The world's governments united with unprecedented speed. Old enemies became allies overnight. Resources were pooled, and military forces began joint training exercises. Scientists shared their research freely, and technological advancement accelerated at an incredible pace. Then came the second message. This one was different. It contained designs for basic shield technology. The Builders had sent it, hoping to give Earth a fighting chance. But there was a catch. The technology required materials that humans had never even imagined before. Dr. Walker's team made the breakthrough in month 3. They discovered that common Earth metals, when exposed to specific frequencies of electromagnetic radiation, could replicate the alien material's properties. It wasn't as effective as the original design, but it was something they could actually build. The first test of the shield technology took place in a remote desert facility. No one expected what happened next. The shield didn't just work. It worked better than the alien designs predicted. Something about Earth's magnetic field enhanced the effect, creating a barrier that was twice as strong as it should have been. Time was running out. The alien fleets were now close enough to detect with conventional telescopes. 2 massive groups of ships, approaching from different directions. The Builders' ships looked like crystalline structures, elegant and precise. The Swarm's vessels were organic, shifting and changing as they moved. Both fleets ignored all attempts at communication. They were focused entirely on each other, treating Earth as nothing more than the latest battlefield in their endless war. That would be their first mistake. They hadn't bothered to study the planet they were about to fight over. They hadn't bothered to learn about humans. As the alien ships entered the solar system, Dr. Walker made one final discovery in the original message, a small note hidden in the mathematical code. Unexpected variables often yield unexpected results. He smiled as he realized what it meant. The aliens had overlooked humanity's greatest strength, their ability to adapt and overcome. The war for Earth was about to begin, and neither side was prepared for what humans would do to protect their home. The sky turned purple on the day the alien fleets arrived. Both sides emerged from their faster-than-light travel at the same moment, filling Earth's orbit with massive ships that blocked out the sun. The builders' crystalline vessels sparkled like diamonds in space, while the swarm's organic ships pulsed with an eerie green light. Dr. Walker watched from the control center as the first shots were fired. Energy beams of impossible colors spliced through space. The two alien forces clashed above Earth, seemingly forgetting about the planet below in their eagerness to destroy each other. Debris from destroyed ships burned up in the atmosphere, creating artificial meteor showers that lit up the night sky. Then something unexpected happened. A builder ship, damaged in the battle, fell into Earth's atmosphere. Instead of crashing, it managed a controlled landing in the Australian outback. The swarm immediately sent down their own forces to capture it. Earth's military forces, led by Commander Robert Stone, reached the crash site first. The builder ship's hull had cracked open, revealing its crew. They weren't what anyone expected. The aliens looked like walking crystals, each one a different color, communicating through pulses of light. The first human-alien contact wasn't dramatic or violent. It was simply confused. The builders hadn't expected humans to reach them so quickly or to offer help. While medical teams tried to figure out how to treat crystalline life forms, the swarm made their move. Their drop pods fell like rain, each one containing dozens of their soldiers. The swarm looked like a nightmare made real, constantly shifting forms, adapting to whatever they touched. One moment they walked on 2 legs, the next they crawled on 6. Their bodies changed color and texture to match their surroundings. The first battle between humans and the swarm took place right there in the desert. Earth's military forces had expected to be outmatched by the advanced aliens. Instead, they discovered something surprising. The swarm had no concept of tactical retreat. They kept attacking in the same way over and over, unable to understand why their strategies weren't working. Commander Stone's forces used simple guerrilla tactics, striking fast and falling back. The swarm, used to enemies that either stood their ground or ran away completely, couldn't adapt to this fighting style. They lost hundreds of their soldiers trying to capture the builder ship, never realizing that humans had already moved the alien crew to a secure location. The builders, watching this from their medical beds, saw something in humans that surprised them. Despite being technologically inferior, humans showed an adaptability that neither alien species possessed. When one strategy failed, humans tried another. When their weapons weren't effective, they found new ways to use them. Above Earth, the space battle continued. The swarm and the builders were locked in their ancient patterns, fighting the same way they had for millions of years. But on the ground, things were changing. Humans began collecting fallen alien technology, figuring out how to use it in ways neither species had considered. The builders made their decision. Breaking millions of years of tradition, they opened formal communication with Earth's leaders. They offered an alliance, not as masters to servants, but as partners. They had seen enough to realize that humans had something unique, the ability to think differently, to change, to evolve. The swarm responded with fury. They launched a massive attack, not just on military targets, but on civilian populations. They expected to break human spirits. Instead, they united humanity like never before. People from every country, every background, came together to fight back. As the sun set on that first day of actual combat, both alien species had learned a valuable lesson. The builders learned that their ancient ways of thinking needed to change. The swarm learned that adapting physically wasn't enough. They needed to adapt their strategies too. And humans learned that they weren't as primitive as the aliens thought. The real war was just beginning, and Earth was no longer just a battlefield. It was becoming something else, the place where everything would change. The truth about humanity emerged in a small laboratory 3 weeks after the aliens arrived. Dr. Walker and his team had been studying tissue samples from wounded soldiers who had survived direct contact with swarm weapons. What they found changed everything. The soldiers' cells showed signs of rapid mutation, but not in a harmful way. Their bodies were adapting, becoming more resistant to alien weapons with each exposure. At first, the research team thought it was a fluke, a rare genetic response. Then more reports started coming in from hospitals around the world. Every human who survived an encounter with either alien species showed similar changes. Their DNA was rewriting itself, incorporating defensive measures against both the swarm's biological attacks and the builders' energy weapons. It wasn't just surviving. Humans were evolving in real time. The builders were fascinated. In all their millennia of exploration, they had never seen anything like it. Their own crystalline forms were perfect but unchanging. The swarm could adapt quickly but lost those adaptations just as fast. Humans, however, passed their adaptations down to the next generation. Dr. Walker worked with builder scientists to understand this phenomenon. They discovered that human DNA had an unusual property. It could absorb and integrate beneficial changes while rejecting harmful ones. The very thing that both alien species had dismissed as primitive. Human biology's imperfect, constantly changing nature was actually their greatest strength. The first clear evidence of this advantage came during a swarm attack on a coastal city. Their weapons, which had been lethal 3 weeks ago, now caused only minor injuries. The humans fighting on the front lines were becoming naturally resistant. The swarm tried to adapt their weapons, but human DNA adapted faster. Even more surprising was how these changes spread. Humans who had never been in combat started showing the same adaptations. The builders' scientists were baffled. This kind of species-wide evolution should have taken thousands of years, not weeks. Something about the presence of advanced alien life had awakened dormant abilities in human genetics. Commander Stone's forces began implementing new strategies based on this discovery. Instead of trying to match the aliens' advanced technology, they focused on their natural advantages. Small teams of experienced soldiers, their bodies already adapted to alien weapons, led the fights. Each battle made them stronger, more resistant. The swarm noticed these changes and tried to counter them. They attempted to harvest human DNA, to incorporate this ability into their own genetic structure. But every attempt failed. The same flexibility that made human DNA so adaptable also made it impossible for the swarm to copy. They couldn't understand how something could be both strong and flexible at the same time. In their secure facilities, the builders studied these developments with growing excitement. They had spent millions of years preserving and protecting life across the galaxy, but they had never seen a species with this much potential. Humans weren't just surviving the war. They were being forged by it, transformed into something entirely new. Dr. Walker's team made another breakthrough when they studied the children born since the aliens arrived. These babies were different, stronger, more resilient, with heightened mental capabilities. The next generation of humans was being born ready for a universe filled with advanced life forms. The swarm responded to these developments with increasing desperation. Their attacks became more frequent, more violent. But each attack only accelerated humanity's evolution. Every failed attempt to destroy humanity made them stronger. The very weapons designed to eliminate humans were instead helping them advance. As the third month of the war ended, both alien species had to accept a new reality. They had come to Earth expecting to fight their ancient war over a primitive world. Instead, they had become catalysts for the rapid evolution of a species that might soon surpass them both. The real question was no longer who would win the war. The question was, what would humanity become by the time it was over? The alliance with the builders began officially on a rainy morning in Geneva. Human leaders gathered with the crystalline aliens in a specially designed chamber that could support both species. The meeting room hummed with energy fields that allowed the builders to maintain their form in Earth's atmosphere, while translator devices converted their light pulses into human speech. The builders shared their technology freely, but humans didn't use it the way they expected. Instead of copying their designs exactly, human engineers took the basic principles and combined them with their own ideas. The results surprised everyone. especially the builders themselves. A young engineer named Mike Wilson made the first breakthrough. He combined builder crystal technology with ordinary solar panels, creating energy weapons that drew power from any light source. The builders had never considered this approach. Their technology required specific power sources. But humans, used to working with limited resources, found ways to make things work with whatever they had. The swarm discovered this new adaptability the hard way. They attacked a small military base expecting to find standard builder defenses. Instead, they found hybrid weapons that behaved unpredictably. Human soldiers used modified builder shields that could change frequency on the fly, adapting to each new swarm attack pattern. Dr. Walker worked closely with the builder scientists, sharing information about human DNA. The builders provided advanced medical technology, and humans showed them how to use it in new ways. Together, they developed treatments that enhanced humanity's already impressive adaptation abilities. Soldiers could now consciously control their body's defensive responses, accelerating their natural evolution. But the greatest innovation came from an unexpected source. A group of video game designers, brought in to help develop combat simulators, created a new way to control builder ships. The crystalline vessels, designed to be piloted by beings of pure logic, were modified to respond to human intuition and emotion. The result was something entirely new, ships that could perform maneuvers neither species could achieve alone. Commander Stone led the first mixed human-builder space battle. The swarm expected to face the same rigid tactics the builders had used for millions of years. Instead, they encountered ships that moved like dancers. Human creativity merged with builder precision. The battle lasted less than an hour. The swarm lost a third of their fleet. The alliance changed both species. The builders, set in their ways for millions of years, learned to appreciate human unpredictability. Humans gained access to technology beyond their dreams, but kept their innovative spirit. Together, they created defenses that the swarm couldn't overcome through simple adaptation. On the ground, human cities began to transform. Builder crystal technology merged with human architecture, creating structures that could repair themselves and adapt to attacks. The swarm's attempts to destroy infrastructure became increasingly futile as buildings learned to heal like living things. The builders watched in amazement as humans took their perfect, unchanging technology and made it fluid and adaptable. Weapons evolved during battles, shields learned from each hit they took, and ships developed new capabilities based on their pilots' needs. What had begun as a simple alliance was becoming something more, the birth of a completely new way of approaching technology and warfare. But the swarm wasn't defeated yet. They had spent millions of years consuming and adapting, and they weren't going to give up easily. Their attacks became more desperate, more unpredictable. They began targeting the very thing that made the Human Builder Alliance so strong, their ability to communicate and work together. As the fourth month of war came to an end, both sides prepared for what would become the most crucial phase of the conflict. The swarm gathered their forces for one massive attack, hoping to break the alliance before humans could develop even further. They had finally realized that humanity wasn't just another primitive species to be conquered or avoided. Humans had become something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that could take the best aspects of both ancient civilizations and forge them into something entirely new. The war was about to enter its final, decisive phase, and the fate of 3 species hung in the balance. The swarm's massive attack came without warning. Their ships darkened the skies over every major city on Earth simultaneously. This wasn't just an attack. It was an attempt to end the war in one devastating strike. The swarm had combined all their adaptations, creating weapons that they believed could overcome both human evolution and builder technology. From his command center, Commander Stone watched as the first wave hit. Swarm ships dropped what looked like living meteors, biological weapons that grew and spread as they fell. The builder-human hybrid defenses held at first, but the swarm had learned. Each attack changed slightly, probing for weaknesses, adapting faster than ever before. Dr. Walker and his team worked frantically in their underground lab. The builders' crystalline faces pulsed with rapid colors as they analyzed the attack patterns. This was different from anything in their long history. The swarm wasn't just adapting physically. They were using strategy, something they'd learned from watching humans. The first defense line broke after 6 hours. The swarm's living weapons found a way through the shields, melting through crystal-reinforced walls like they were paper. Cities around the world reported the same thing. Their defenses were failing. For the first time since the war began, humanity faced the real possibility of defeat. Then something unexpected happened in New York. A group of cornered soldiers, their weapons useless against the new swarm adaptations, started using the rubble from destroyed buildings as weapons. They discovered that the swarm, so focused on countering high-tech attacks, had no defense against simple physical impacts. A chunk of concrete could do what an energy weapon couldn't. The discovery spread quickly. Humans abandoned their advanced weapons and returned to basics. Builder crystals were used not to power energy weapons, but to strengthen ordinary materials. The swarm, expecting another technological response, found themselves facing an army fighting with enhanced versions of ancient weapons. Commander Stone ordered a worldwide tactical shift. While builder ships engaged the swarm in space, human forces on the ground used their evolved physical capabilities combined with simple weapons. The swarm's biological weapons, designed to counter specific threats, couldn't adapt to being attacked from so many different directions at once. The tide turned in Tokyo first. A small group of defenders, their bodies now highly evolved after months of exposure to alien combat, used builder-enhanced traditional weapons to drive back a swarm assault. Similar reports began coming in from other cities. The swarm's perfect attack was falling apart in the face of human unpredictability. But victory came at a heavy price. Many cities lay in ruins, their advanced defenses overcome by the initial assault. Millions of people had retreated to underground shelters, protected by the last layers of builder shields. The swarm's weapons had left large areas uninhabitable, covered in ever-changing biological growth that resisted all attempts to destroy it. Dr. Walker made a crucial discovery during the battle. The swarm's new adaptations were unstable. In their desperate attempt to overcome human evolution and builder technology at the same time, they had pushed their own adaptive abilities too far. Their weapons were breaking down, turning against them. The builders observed all this with their equivalent of awe. In their long history, they had never seen a species fight like this, able to use the most advanced technology one moment and the most primitive weapons the next. Human adaptability wasn't just biological, it was tactical and psychological too. As the massive attack finally ended, both sides had learned painful lessons. The swarm discovered that adaptation alone wasn't enough. Their single-minded focus on biological evolution had left them vulnerable to simpler threats. The builders realized that their technological perfection meant nothing without the ability to use it creatively. And humans learned that their greatest strength wasn't their evolving DNA or their access to builder technology. It was their ability to change not just their bodies or their weapons, but their entire way of thinking. The swarm's greatest attack had failed not because it wasn't powerful enough, but because humans refused to fight the way they were expected to. The war was entering its final phase, and Earth had survived its darkest day. But the changes this battle had brought were only the beginning. In the aftermath of the Great Battle, Earth's survivors began to show signs of change that went beyond simple adaptation. Dr. Walker's research team, now working from a fortified underground facility, documented the first cases. Soldiers who had fought in the heaviest battles were developing abilities that should have been impossible. The first clear evidence came from a group of veterans who had survived multiple swarm attacks. Their bodies had not just become resistant to alien weapons, they had started incorporating aspects of builder crystal technology. Their skin would occasionally shimmer with crystalline patterns, and some could instinctively generate small energy fields similar to builder shields. Commander Stone noticed the changes in himself too. During a routine scan, Doctors found that his neural patterns had altered. He could process information faster, react more quickly, and somehow sensed the presence of both swarm and builder technology. Other military leaders reported similar changes. Humanity wasn't just adapting anymore. They were evolving into something entirely new. The builders were both fascinated and concerned. Their long-held belief that species could only evolve slowly over millions of years was being challenged. The crystalline aliens had never seen evolution happen in real time, and they couldn't explain how humans were managing to integrate aspects of both alien species into their biology. Children born during the war showed even more dramatic changes. Their DNA had structures that hadn't existed in human genetics before the alien arrival. They could instinctively understand builder technology and naturally resist swarm bioweapons. More surprisingly, they could communicate with each other in ways that reminded the builders of their own light pulse language. The swarm noticed these changes too, and their attempts to harvest human DNA became more desperate. They launched specialized infiltration units, designed to capture humans for study. But each attempt failed. The evolved humans could somehow sense the swarm's presence, their bodies automatically generating defenses against any new threat. Dr. Walker made another startling discovery when studying tissue samples from the new generation. The changes weren't random mutations. They were directed, as if human DNA had developed intelligence of its own. It was selecting the most useful adaptations from both alien species and incorporating them in ways that neither the builders nor the swarm had thought possible. Even more remarkable was how these changes spread through the human population. People who had never been in combat began showing similar adaptations, though to a lesser degree. It was as if humanity as a species had decided to evolve together, sharing beneficial changes across the entire population. The builders provided their most advanced medical technology to study this phenomenon. What they found amazed them. Human DNA had begun creating hybrid structures that combined biological and crystalline properties. It was as if humanity was building a bridge between organic and inorganic life. Commander Stone led a series of tests to understand the military implications of these changes. Evolved humans could operate builder technology without any training, their minds naturally connecting with the crystalline systems. They could detect and counter swarm adaptations before they fully formed. Some could even heal injuries by instinctively generating crystal-like structures in their bodies. The swarm's response to these developments was unexpected. Some of their units began showing signs of developing individual consciousness, breaking away from their hive mind. It seemed that extended contact with evolved humans was affecting them in ways they couldn't control or understand. Dr. Walker theorized that humanity had become a catalyst for change in both alien species. The builders were learning to adapt and change their perfect but static forms, while parts of the swarm were developing independence and individual thought. Humanity wasn't just evolving. They were causing the evolution of their allies and enemies alike. As the 6th month of war neared its end, it became clear that the conflict had become more than a battle for territory or survival. It was becoming the birthplace of a new kind of life, one that combined the best aspects of all three species. The question was no longer whether humanity would survive, but what they would become when the evolution was complete. The final stage of the war was approaching, and with it, the emergence of something the galaxy had never seen before. The transformation of humanity reached its peak during the final battle for Earth. The swarm, desperate and fearful of what humans were becoming, launched their entire remaining fleet in one last attack. But the humans they faced now were not the same species they had first encountered 7 months ago. Commander Stone stood on the bridge of a hybrid ship, his evolved consciousness directly connected to its systems. Around him, other evolved humans coordinated with builder allies, their minds linking with crystal technology as naturally as breathing. Their bodies shimmered with internal energy, a visible sign of how far they had come from their original form. Dr. Walker watched from his laboratory as the battle unfolded. The readings from evolved human soldiers showed something unprecedented. Their DNA was stabilizing into its new form, creating a perfect balance between organic adaptability and crystal-like energy manipulation. They had become living bridges between all forms of life in the galaxy. The swarm's attack faltered as it encountered this new humanity. Their biological weapons couldn't harm beings that could reshape their molecular structure at will. Their adaptive abilities meant nothing against opponents who could predict and counter their changes before they happened. For the first time in their long history, the swarm experienced fear. Then something remarkable happened. A group of swarm units, influenced by prolonged exposure to human evolution, broke away from their hive mind. They approached Earth's defenses not to attack, but to communicate. These units had developed individual consciousness, inspired by humanity's example. They wanted to understand rather than consume. The builders witnessed this with their equivalent of awe. In their millions of years of existence, they had never seen one species influence others so profoundly. Humanity hadn't just evolved themselves. They had become a catalyst for the evolution of all life they encountered. The builders' own crystalline forms had begun showing signs of adaptability, influenced by their close alliance with humans. The final battle ended not with destruction, but with transformation. The remaining swarm forces retreated, their hive mind shattered by the emergence of individual consciousness among their units. Those that stayed behind began their own evolution, guided by human scientists who understood the path between individual and collective existence. Earth itself had changed. Cities were rebuilt using hybrid technologies, structures that were both organic and crystalline, able to grow and adapt like living things. The children of this new age were born with abilities their ancestors would have considered miraculous, yet they maintained their essential humanity, their creativity, their emotions, their ability to dream and imagine. Dr. Walker's final research paper documented how humanity had become something entirely new. They weren't just another species anymore. They had become living proof that evolution didn't have to be a slow, random process. They had shown that life could consciously direct its own development, choosing the best path forward. Commander Stone led the first mission beyond the solar system, commanding a fleet of ships that were as much alive as they were machines. Earth had become a beacon for other civilizations, a place where ancient enemies could learn to change and grow. The galaxy would never be the same. The builders stayed on Earth, learning from humans how to break free from their rigid, unchanging forms. The transformed swarm units established their own colony on Mars, developing a new culture that balanced individual consciousness with collective cooperation. Both species had been forever changed by their encounter with humanity. As the first year after the war ended, the news spread across the galaxy. A new species had emerged, one that could bridge the gap between all forms of life. Humanity had become something that had never existed before, a species that could help others evolve, that could find paths between extremes, that could imagine new ways of existing and make them real. The children of Earth looked up at the stars with eyes that could see energy fields and minds that could touch consciousness across space. They were the first generation of a new kind of human, but they wouldn't be the last. The evolution wasn't ending, it was just beginning. This was how humanity became the new species, not through conquest or destruction, but through their unique ability to adapt, to change, to grow, and to help others do the same. The galaxy had gained not just a new species, but a new way of thinking about what life could become.